underway. And I think this will now be in there. I think everybody has to accept that it's being recorded. I believe that there is that that pops up on your screen.
That popped up on mine, yep.
There we go, learning. So welcome to episode 1 of Sasha's Stories. As you can tell, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm very excited to be here today. I'm very excited and I feel very privileged to share this space with all of you. So I'm very thankful for you joining in this evening. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Harvey. So who is Harvey? He's a writer, he's a runner, he's a personal trainer, he's a dad, he's a dog dad. I think that might be my favorite part. He's a husband, he's a friend, he's a person with an open heart who invites you in the first time you meet him. Harvey is a Sarnia native who attended the University of Waterloo, where he was a 2-time All-Canadian and is now a member of the Waterloo Warriors Sports Hall of Fame. He's a former Team Canada runner, and I know he recently joined the University of Toronto Track's Masters Track program. But before we dive into this book club, I'm going to hand it over to Harvey to fill in any of the blanks about who you are.
Thank you, Sasha. There's not much I can add to that lovely introduction, and I can see you've done some homework there. To add to that, I would say that I was also the coach for a little while at York University for a few years for the distance running program, and I broke in 4 minutes for the mile, and with that was the athlete of the year, and I'm in the Hall of Fame for the city of Sarnia, which is where I grew up, because I was the first man to do that. So I was very fortunate to be welcomed into that exclusive group of people as well. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
Super cool. So, just back from my OFSA days, there was quite a few OFSA champions from Sarnia. So there's, we also used to joke with Dow, but there's something in the water. Maybe not quite funny joke this day and age, but got you laughing. Okay.
Might not be far from the truth. Say no more.
Like most podcasts or other things, I thought we'd start out with some warm-up questions, right? I'm gonna be honest, I kind of stole this idea from John Shep, where he does his strides at the end, right? Like, you do strides at the beginning of your workout and you feel great. So here we go. Question number 1. Where in your hometown is your favorite place to run? Or where in the world is your favorite place to run?
Well, I'm going to go with the hometown. My hometown now is Toronto, and my favorite run takes me out through the Cedar Vale Ravine and down through the Beltline Trail. And some of the stories in my book take place there, because that's where my life was happening. And through the Moore Park Ravine. That's my favorite place in Toronto. And then my original hometown, Sarnia, they have a beautiful railway bed that extends for miles and miles, and feeds right into the main park in the city called Canatera Park. So if you're ever in Sarnia, if you're looking for something long, search that railway bed and see how you can connect yourself into Canatera Park from there. It's a lovely place to run.
Now, are you on Strava, and do you have the course record on this trail?
No.
Okay.
On both questions. I don't know that I have any course records in Sarnia. I may have the 5,000 in the men's department.
Okay.
I had that at one time, but I don't know in the road running group. Sarnia has, at this Canatera Park, has this exact 1 kilometer circle. So it's on the road. It's this 1 kilometer circle, and they run a lot of road races with the local road running club there. And yeah, that might be my lone record.
Okay, so there we go. So your event was the 1500, the mile, right? The metric mile and the mile. So knowing that, and I am so excited for this question, what was your favorite workout?
Okay, this workout was called a Brazilian circuit, and if I have any of my York University athletes here, they can talk to you about it as well. But what this was, a Brazilian circuit was, the phrase was coined by my coach after the great Brazilian runner Joaquim Cruz, who was the Olympic champion back in the mid-'80s. And what this is, it's a workout where you choose 10 exercises, and it's done on a park, or can be done on a road, but mostly it's done on a grass surface. And you choose 10 strength exercises. They could be push-ups, they could be sitting tucks, burpees, and then you sequentially do these exercises, but between each one you run 100 meters. So I would often set them up on a soccer pitch. So you'd start at one side of the soccer pitch, do your 20 push-ups, and then you run the 100, and then you do your 10 burpees, and then you run the 100, and you come up with 10 exercises. So you run 1,000 meters and all this strength work in one shot. You have a 3-minute rest, and then you run as hard as you can, time trial, for 1,000 meters. And we would do a set of 3 of these, and we would do it in the preseason leading up to track season, probably once a week for probably 2 months. And without fail, and I found this with my athletes as well, without fail, what would happen is your body would become increasingly loose and smooth, and you would run with more and more efficiency as the workout progressed. And I can remember running some of these 1,000-meter runs in under 4-minute mile pace as I progressed through the workout when I was really fit, because I was so loose, and it always felt so good, and it's my favorite.
I have done this workout, although very meanly, Lynn Kanuka made us do miles. You had to do miles in between.
You could choose the distances. It all works.
Oh, okay. You can, just like the mile. Anyways, it was another reason I loved this workout. It was so much fun, right? Like, it's different. Anyway, okay. Thank you for that. If any of you have not done the Brazilian, I highly recommend it. It is it's just different, and it's a great way to look at running in a different way, and really exciting. You can, you spice things up with exercises in the middle.
Yeah, a great way to make your body strong for all levels of runners, for sure.
So with that, and thinking strong, and I also took a little bit of this question and modified it from Brene Brown's broadcast, because I for sure have an academic crush on that woman. So what is the best piece of advice, or as she would say, what is the shittiest piece of advice in running you've ever received?
Okay. The best piece of advice came from my coach, Vito Dalban. And he wrote down, it was prior to the Olympic trial in 1988. And he wrote down on a piece of paper for me the difference between aspiration and inspiration. And he was stressing the importance of running with inspiration, which is the concept of running with all doors to your energies open, to look at the world as a place that you could approach with an open mind, and when the opportunity came, you were there to seize it. And if the opportunity didn't come, you were going to make the best of the situation by being open to it, instead of the aspiration where goals and expectations and these types of strictures sometimes give you tunnel vision, which is something I really struggled with. So that was, I still remember it because of the value of the advice. It was such good advice.
It's a beautiful piece of advice. I mean, I think we've all done that to ourselves, maybe in running, maybe in other things, where we, aspirationally put so much pressure on ourselves that it's basically self-sabotage.
It can be because it'll hurry you into some of the darker thoughts that haunt so many of us in the competitive realm.
Now, do you want to share the shittiest piece of advice you were ever given?
I think the worst advice I was given came in my high school years, which was the concept of more is better. I had a new coach come in and take me under his wing, as well as my coach, who was still a competitive athlete at that time. And the two of us trained with him. And his idea was to bump up to really, really high volume. And I, of course, bought in, thinking it was the next step in my development. But I think entrenched in that was a lot of the ego of the person. And that I was in a dangerous environment. And as it all played out, stress fracture, abandonment, a lot of things played out. It was a very dark experience in terms of my athletic career. But that would have been the worst advice, that just heap on the volume, like totally revamp everything that's worked for you thus far. That was the worst. Long answer.
No, but such a sage piece of advice, right? I mean, even myself, right? I look to some of, I've, aspirations of running another marathon, and I look to what some of the other people are doing, and it's like, oh, I should just jump my mileage up. That just equals a recipe for injury, sure. And so it's a great reminder, and also the reminder of like, I'll put my Natasha Wodak hat on here for a second. Like, you don't need the high mileage if it doesn't work for you, right? Like, it works for some people, but it doesn't work for others. But regardless of who you are, if you throw a whole bunch of mileage at somebody all of a sudden, we can we can't take it.
Yeah.
Drugs or not. Our
And I
bodies
was
can't.
a young high school kid too, right? So you're still developing so much. Your body's still developing. So that was a hard lesson learned.
To the person who just joined, can I pretty please ask you to turn off your camera because I can't figure it out. Uh, and if you can't find it, it's in the bottom left where the mute and unmute button is. So the last stride question we have, and for sure, well, I'm excited for this one too, regardless. What is your favorite post race or post workout snack?
Okay. I'm gonna say I'm a salty and pasta kind of guy. So I'm going with the pastas and the Italian, the pizzas and the pastas. I'm always going to find a happy home with those two things. And sorry, I lost your volume there.
I muted myself, so I've already like done this, but did you
Okay.
have bacon in there? Because saltine with
Yes.
the pasta
Yes.
and oh,
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
okay.
I'm a extra bacon,
Ah,
extra cheese,
speaking my language.
extra cheese, figuratively and literally. Yes.
Awesome. Um, just as a reminder to the person who's sort of struggling here, your stop video is in the bottom right. If you are, so that you could pretty please turn your video off. So let's dive into your book, Taking Life in Stride. Oh, there's my ring light. Can you see it?
Lovely. Yeah.
So I listened to you on the Athletics Ontario podcast, which was super fun to listen to. And in it, you talk about how this book is a memoir, not a memoir. So knowing that it's somewhere between a memoir and a bunch of amazing short stories, take us through that journey of writing this book through your life.
Oh, thank you. Yes. The inception of the book, I think, comes from the fact that I'm a storyteller. I'm always telling stories, and I'm a personal trainer, as you mentioned, and I would tell these stories to my clients as they were pounding away on the treadmill or doing something that was kind of nice. And I had a repertoire. I had a number of stories that I would go back to and tell them over and over again. And my clients, like over the years, they really enjoyed them, and they said you should write a book. So eventually I said, oh, okay, I do it. And that was predicated on two very big things. And those two big things were named David Staines and Noreen Taylor, who they're a couple and they're among my clients now. Now, David Staines is an Order of Canada recipient from his contribution as an author to Canadian literature and the Canadian literary culture. He's a juggernaut, and his partner Noreen Taylor started and managed her own book prize, national book prize for nonfiction for 20 years, called the Charles Taylor Literary Prize, Prize for Literary Nonfiction. So these are the two people who I'm working out with 3 or 4 times a week. And I asked David, if I was to try and write these stories down, would you help me? And he was in both feet right from the start. And so I had this real pro teaching me to write, because I've never written a story before, and so I embarked on this process with this man and this woman beside me, which is just, yeah, unbelievable.
So I got to go back to like one of my stride questions here. What was the
Yes.
best piece of advice that they gave you through this process?
Okay. The best advice David gave me was nobody writes well. People only rewrite well when it comes to literature. And he used give me a moment. He edited for great authors and spoke Alice Munro being one, who we spoke like she would never be satisfied, and he would almost have to talk her into, this is ready, like, and he would be a voice, one of the voices would encourage her to actually be ready. But that was the great advice he gave me. And the advice that Noreen Taylor gave me, like, more or less the importance of storytelling, uh, culturally, artistically, the value in sharing stories. Like, I would listen to her every year speak to the greatest writers in Canada, and address them, and this love of storytelling, this the holding of it with such esteem, was the greatest encouragement type of advice that she provided, as well as real writing and structural advice on my book. She changed the entire structure of my book. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's so many questions I want to ask, but um, I'm going to start with her piece of advice first. And so, things that strikes me, the first, the question is like, did you, as an athlete, or do you journal?
No, I don't.
Oh,
I used to record, like, I used to journal my workouts in terms of recording what they were, but I never wrote down like a journal of like a diary or anything like that in terms of life. So yeah, there was a lot of learning. There's a lot of learning curve going on in my writing process on that front, for sure.
but I don't know. Maybe I just look at it through a different lens. I think writing down those workouts is in a way journaling. Like, even if you don't put those thoughts down, there's pieces of you that let go or pieces of you that hold on. So, like, when a workout goes well, like, you write it down and you sort of like wholeheartedly embody that workout again, right? And you carry it with you in a way. And in the same token, and this is, I'll come back to the other piece of advice, but when a workout, or more importantly, a race doesn't go well, right? You can make a note of it and let go, right? I've parked this somewhere. And so I think in a way you have been telling your story in a different lens. And also to encourage people to say that writing down even just your times, or like, I went for a run today, is journaling, and just trying to reframe so that, one of the things I think is so fascinating about journaling is it's the narrative of our life, right? Like, those times that you recorded are
Yes.
absolutely an incredible story of part of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I would suggest it for anyone. And you had asked me about a writer earlier, prior to us coming on the air here. And in conversation with him, his name's Jerry Buma, and he just wrote a book as well, called The Villanova Story. And he was the Canadian national junior 1 mile record holder. He broke Bruce Kidd's 1 mile junior record. And he and I got talking about this capacity to write down and express both the sort of meat and potatoes of things, and also the emotional context. We talked a lot about the power of that emotional context with writing something down. And yeah, I think it was a really interesting and pertinent uh, entity that really is at the center of writing, both journaling and writing something like a story that you're presenting to others.
And I guess this question's kind of going to answer the question that just, I mean, I gave Harvey some Coles notes before just to be transparent with everybody. But, going back to the first piece of advice that it's not the first draft, but the rewriting. And I think there's such a parallel with racing, right? Like, no matter how long, how short, like, some people get it right on the first try, and I often think there's probably some time trials, so they're like technically rewriting. But talk us through some of those thoughts about the parallels of writing and running and riding and racing, in terms of like the iterations of it.
Yeah, that's a really good discussion. I think we could draw parallels for the pursuit of excellence on many levels, in the art world, in the sport world, in your personal journey in life. In terms of running and writing, I'm going to try and narrow it down to the question. Um, uh, in David, David Staines. Okay, I hand him my first story. It's probably 20 pages long. I'm really proud of it. I've worked hard. I put it together. I give it to him. He reads it. He marks it all up for little corrections. He gives it back to me. He says, "This is beneath you. Rewrite it. Take out 8 pages." I was mortified. I stood there dumbfounded. It was like, that feeling like, um, and then I stepped back because, okay, wait a minute. In order to be a good runner, you don't achieve it on your first practice in your first season. Wait a minute. Like, why do I think this process is any better? So trust. Oh, I trust this man. He, I went back, I started working again. I told him, okay, I'm working on it again. He gave me some more clarity. He said, look, your story did this and that. Like, take this chunk out. It's a different story. Like you're taking the reader left, right. You gotta stay in one lane and take the reader like carefully through that lane. And he gave me this really good advice. And I rewrote it and I took out the 8 pages. And it was like so much better. I rewrote the first story 8 times. I have 8 drafts. I rewrote it 8 times, but he edited it 8 times. Like, that's how patient he was with me. And as time went on, I was able to self-edit much more effectively, because I was starting to learn and understand the process. And there were a few stories where you're really having an on day where wow, much of that first draft is still there. That was something that's a real takeaway of the parallel between running and writing. Another quick thing is the uncertainty. I talk about the track. I refer to it sometimes as the oval stage, because you put yourself out in front of your peers regularly. I mean, when you talk about the Olympics and things like that, you're putting yourself right out in front of everyone on this stage. And there's a huge vulnerability that goes with that, because if you haven't embarked on the road that got you there, your understanding of some of the variables that can happen on any given day isn't necessarily there. You don't understand just how fragile and how complicated the human body is and the athletic process. And so there were parallels there. Like, I would be writing and then questioning myself, just as when I would be thinking of a race and a what if, and I'd be questioning myself. And I think some of the muscle that I developed from running and going through the successes and the failures helped me just to stay the course with the writing, to say no. Like, I have David telling me if something's good. Like, I've got the best. I know that if I get it past him, it's like going to be all right, So those parallels still existed, but I was really fortunate. And I'll use one quick example. Your friends Kate Van Buskirk and Maddie Kelly. I listened to their podcast, and they put themselves out there. They're saying they're going to go for the Olympics, and they're going and talking every month about it. And I'm sitting there, my heart's racing, like thinking, I sure hope these two women can do it, because the world doesn't necessarily understand how hard that is to do when you don't have a standard, and the chances are, it's so prohibitively difficult. But by gosh, they both did it. And wow, that's all I can say. Wow. Yeah.
I mean, I cried a lot when they both qualified, a lot when
Oh,
Maddie Kelly qualified, like one of my
oh,
best friends, right?
I picked those results. I didn't even know them. I never spoken to them. But oh, I was telling my clients about them, and oh, wow, what a journey.
Well, and I mean, and the parallel goes back to a book. Publishing a book and publishing that something that's a part memoir, part short stories. It's hugely vulnerable, right? And how people react, and it's so commendable. So many people say, "Oh, I'm going to write a book," but they don't have the vulnerability to put themselves out there. Because even if you write a piece of fiction, part of you is in there, and the people who really know you, they can see right through that and see you and who you are through that book. So I'm going to sort of pivot here, but I'm going to talk about one of my favorite stories. So I really love the story of Billy the Bunny. Like, I really loved that story. There was just so much, like, I was like, heartwarmingly, this is amazing. Um, this, if some of you haven't read it, this bunny he was borrowed for a period of time, and he went on some amazing worldly adventures. So take us through some of your favorite adventures with Billy the Bunny.
Oh, Billy was a joy. So for those, I mean, I'll try not to spoil too much, but Billy was a lawn ornament rabbit, Billy the bunny. And I took Billy around the world with me when I was in the prime of my racing career, and was fortunate enough to run for Canada and travel to a lot of different places. But what Billy was it wasn't mine. He was stolen from someone. And my plan was all along to give Billy back, but I was going to take him around the world, and I would tell this story to the people that I asked to volunteer to be in photographs with Billy. And people just loved it. They came, they jumped into the photographs. I was able to give Billy back with all these photographs of all these people, of which I'm in none. And the story followed its course, and I'll leave the rest to the reader. But oh gosh, I had, I think, 7 different countries that Billy came to, and gosh, we went canoeing on rivers, and we shot photos in front of the Eiffel Tower, and just these lovely things. It was just one of these concepts that came up. Again, I'll leave that to the story, because it takes you through the whole process, and it was very special and remains very special today.
So, like, I put the today lens on it, right? Like, Billy would have had an Instagram account. Like, Billy the Bunny would have been an absolute Instagram hit. But I did search Billy the Bunny, and the one of the things that I loved, that I saw, is you can't make everyone happy. You're not a bunny. And I can just imagine you across the world, like, holding this lawn ornament, being like, "Hey," and how can you not smile at somebody carrying around a lawn ornament? And then how would you not engage? But so if Billy had an Instagram account today, right? Um, what would Billy's tagline be?
Okay. Billy's tagline. I think something like have carrots, will travel. Have carrots, will travel.
I
That's
love
all it
that.
takes. Yes, that's all it takes.
Now, if you bring those carrots not in a plastic bag, in the original plastic bag they came in, and you try to go through US Customs, I can promise you that you are going into a different room. Not that I've been there. I didn't have, and thankfully I didn't have the bunny. With the carrots alone, it was enough of a conversation.
Well, let me tell you, you talk about customs. I was racing in Ireland, and I came through Belfast, and they found Billy on the scanner because he was cement, right? And the woman dug through my bag, pulls out Billy, looking at me like I'm going through the customs in Belfast. It's not the safest place in the world, and I start stuttering and stammering and explaining what Billy is, and that you see her start to kind of smile. And so I jump in there. I say, can we take a photograph? And no, no. She puts Billy back in. Come on, off with you, you know. Anyway, a great little segue there. Yeah.
Yes, Yeah, we've all been pulled over at customs for having something strange in our backpack. You say that. I once had a bag ripped apart. I used to be an alpine ski coach. I traveled with a brush. And they took my bag apart because they were like, "Ma'am, where are the bullets in your bag?" I was like, "No idea what you're talking about." Anyways, at the end of it, it was metal ski brush, and the way they lined up, they looked like 4-inch long bullets, which I could understand why. Then you don't want to take my bag apart. Except then
Yes.
my bag was across the airport. It was one. It was. I was like, "Oh, this is hello. I'll never see any of you again. It's fine." And again, you're right. And I left someone with a story. You left someone with the story.
That's right.
So we're going to go down a little bit of a different avenue, a little bit of different sentiment. You've already brought this up, but the vulnerability in bearing your soul in a book. So without sharing the details, because it's not my place to share this, can you walk us through, and I'm sorry if I'm layering something on, but walk us through how you let go of the shame of some of the stuff that you carried.
Okay. Yeah, shame. Wow. Um, okay. Yeah, I'm comfortable to talk about this. I'll try and keep it concise, but um, I struggled with ulcerative colitis through all of my running career and through life, and I wasn't going to write a story about it, and I feel kind of wimpy now that I wasn't going to write a story about it because uh, it's a hard topic matter. Something like your digestive tract. And one day when I went to my one of my sessions that I do a group together, I uh, one of my clients, her name's Marilyn Finkelstein, and Marilyn Finkelstein. Sorry, I get a little emotional. She's one of the angels in the world. So she and her husband founded the Crohn's and Colitis Society, two wonderful Canadian people. And I was lucky enough to have her land in one of my exercise groups. And she had brought in an article where this Canadian high jumper, Alex Treasure, had spoken about her struggles with Crohn's and colitis. Particularly, I think her struggles were with Crohn's, and she was a national team member in the high jump. So the article didn't talk so much about her brilliant high jumping career, but talked about her struggles in the context of being a world-class athlete. And it's in the Toronto Star. And I got thinking to myself, come on, man. Okay, you've written this book, like put the backpack on and let's talk about it, you know. And what the journey of writing, you talk about journaling and writing, the journey of writing this thing and knowing Marilyn, she helped me to look through it a different lens. The concept of not having control of your bowels and being an elite runner, it puts you in harrowing situations. And by understanding the process of which Marilyn was trying to help societal attitudes move through the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, education, having businesses have open door policies to people who struggle with this problem, so people can just go in and use facilities without having to feel shame. Like you're talking about it, and you're talking about these problems. So a story that I wasn't going to write about, I started to write about it, and it really opened my eyes to the struggle of shame which I felt around the problem. The feeling of here I am, an adult man, and I'm having to run into somebody's backyard and go to the bathroom because otherwise I'm going to have an accident, you know. And if you think of those times in your life when you've been in a situation where you're really desperate to use a bathroom, well, that was almost daily. So I would plan my running routes to be somewhere where, but I live in Toronto, for Christ's sake. I'm in Toronto, like there is people everywhere. So I did write this story, but I tried to write it with a lot of humor. It's called The Shits. It's a hard topic matter, but I tried to write it with a lot of humor. And I presented some of these really harrowing situations that played out in my world. Um, and through that process, both of writing and experiencing some of these things, I was able to see my shame and meet it with an equal measure of compassion. And where there's shame, there's rarely compassion. And compassion that for yourself that says, "Hey, man, like, what are you gonna do? You know, these things happen, and here we are." And by making that strong connection, I was able to shed some of that shame. Like, shame is this really low energy, shrouding emotion that robs us of so much of our greatness. It sends us underground. It for some people it leads them to acting in dark ways. So anytime you can address it, I think, and put it out there and really, um, uh, what's the word? Change it, metamorphosize it, like make it into something that's not that's not hidden. I think your greatness can shine as a result much more brightly. And so, boy, the debt of gratitude that I feel for Marilyn and all she's done. Wow, I don't know how to put it into words.
I think you just did, and I think you did in such a beautiful way, and I can't thank you enough for the vulnerability, but for those beautiful lessons that you just shared. I mean, that the warm wash of shame, right? Like, we all know what that feels like when the warm wash of shame comes over us, right?
Yeah.
It's a haunting feeling, and you never know when it might show up or what it might do. Back to my academic crush, Brene Brown. If you put shame in a petri dish, it is going to explode. It's like COVID-19. It's just gonna explode. But if you put shame and compassion or empathy in a petri dish, shame can't survive. And so that's what Marilyn did for you. And then
Mhm.
that's what she taught you, right? That beautiful lesson of self compassion. Because it's one thing for the warm wash of shame to go away when we're with someone else, but it's really challenging to make that warm wash of shame go away when we're alone. And that beautiful lesson that you just shared with us in self compassion, so that we can all take that forward. And you are
So put.
undoubtedly a positive person. And this is a really challenging topic and a really challenging thing that you go through. So, when all of those really challenging things, and you couldn't fuel yourself for big races and big workouts, like, Harvey, how did you stay so positive and stay in it? How do you still stay in it? It's amazing.
Well, I mean, I think truth be told, I don't always stay positive. I'm not like times it's a pretty broken machine. Um, I think that in any really difficult struggle, I'll start off by saying I don't exist in a vacuum. I exist as a part of a community, as a part of a family, as a part of a support system as well. And I think the support system largely helps pull me through. That being said, like I look at, I talk about in one of my stories, I talk about, it's my final story about my relationship with my partner, Nicole, and talk about when something stresses one, it stresses the other. And so in some of my really dark moments, like she had to sit down there with me in the trenches. And boy, oh boy, like, boy, people, it's hard at times to have your best self that you want to show everybody happening when you're in the trenches. But love is a funny thing, and not romantic love, but the kind of love that we seek with our life's partner. You'll stand there in the trenches, and you'll get dirty together, and come out the other side, and okay, yeah, with the love, you still have love, and that's that's the bigger picture right there. It's like, so how do you stay positive? I think, you do build yourself back up to a place where, yeah, okay, yeah, like let's recognize what this is, and look how hard it was. But at the same time, we can survive, and there can be brighter days ahead. And that's the message of hope that happens when anyone comes through a dark struggle.
Oh my gosh. Just so beautiful. And, that description of love. I think one of the unique things with the running community is this sense of love, right? That it's not romantic love, but there's this, line up at any major marathon in the world and everybody loves each other out there, right? Everybody is there to support each other, like through the successes, through the failures, literally in those days, through the shits, because it's a marathon, right? Right? Love, that's what gets us through. So just, I'm going to put my hand up that if you ever need me, you can always call and I will be there in the trenches with you too. You are such a beautiful person. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to ask my last question. I'm going to open it up to the audience. But I do want to save this. So here, Harvey, sorry, I just super nervous about saying this. You so very kindly dropped off a book at my house for me. But more than that, you inscribed it. And you said to me, with gratitude for all that you contribute to the running community. Back at you. Thank you for all that you contribute to the running community, to the personal fitness community, to the community of love, actually, now that we've talked about that tonight. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
So with that, I will open up the questions to anybody here. I'd say raise your hands, but I may not be very good with that. There's a hand up. Okay, I'm inviting this person. Oh, I don't know how to. No, I don't know what I'm doing there. Okay. It says invite, but then it's got this like complicated, I don't know what. So I don't know. I think someone's trying to call in, maybe.
Okay.
Nope, I've got nothing.
Sasha.
Hi.
Hi, this is Paul Olwenyi from Kampala,
Oh.
Uganda, East Africa.
Wow. Paul.
Yes. Hi, Harvey. Great show. Thanks for hosting this, Sasha. It is 4:05 a.m. in East Africa, and it was so worth it. Thank you for the show. Thank you, Harvey. Sasha, just not a question, but just some lessons that Harvey imparted to me as a coach and as a training partner all those years ago in Toronto, York University. Harvey taught me what it means to be disciplined. He taught me about work ethic. He taught me about racing strategy and tactics. He taught me also how to push my mind, push my body, push my spirit through self-imposed barriers that I never thought it was possible to break through. But more important than that, Sasha, he taught me life lessons, some of which he has shared on the show today, and I am eternally grateful. Thank you for this podcast, Sasha. Wonderful show. Thanks, Harvey.
Thanks, Paul.
Wow. Paul, thank you.
Oh, I haven't seen Paul for 20 years. Let's see when he moved back to Africa, but he was not only my athlete, my very close friend. And wow, what a surprise. What a surprise to see Paul show up. Wow. Thanks, Paul.
Paul, can we get you a cup of coffee? I feel like we're
wow.
Uganda makes some of my favorite coffee in the entire world.
Well, I will send you a batch, Sasha.
I mean, Paul, while we've got you here, can I put you on the spot to share a funny or one of your most memorable moments with Harvey?
Wow. There were many, Sasha. I guess for me it was maybe a training moment where Sasha, he talked about those Brazilian circuits, and he says that he would get stronger and stronger through those Brazilian circuits. Well, the opposite was true for me. So I would just feel shittier and shittier through the Brazilian circuits. And I would watch him get further and further away from me. And I would be in awe at his stride and how smooth and how silky he was. So that stood out to me. And I always wondered how and if ever I would get to be as strong and as smooth as Harvey.
What a beautiful memory. Now, I'm so sorry. I think, unfortunately, the shittiest piece of running advice you've ever had is go do a Brazilian workout by the sounds of, although some good lessons in there for you, but it sounds like that wasn't so much fun. So, Harvey, like, what's your secret? Like, listen, it's a tough workout. Like, what secret to like drawing the superpower from those exercises?
Well, I think that obviously there's a deal of physical preparation, and I think also repeating that workout week after week, you then begin to realize how all these benefits come forward, and your body is sort of forced to find an efficiency in order to make that workout happen. And something about the exercises and the running combination, I always felt would make that happen. I think Paul's being a little modest because I was the one holding those stopwatches, and he would routinely come back with stronger and stronger intervals, but they were really tough. They were really tough, and I ran with the men's team too, so that's Paul's referring to that too. And I was a sub 4 minute miler still at that time. So
Wow.
those young people were running with someone who had years and years of training ahead of them. So yeah, but I'll throw a quick one in about Paul. Paul was my 4-year-old son, very close friend. And when Paul came into the house, we disappeared. It was him and Paul. Yeah, Paul was a very special guy, and yeah, he's one of the good people. One of the good people. Yeah.
Paul, you sound like an absolutely beautiful human. I mean, it's not surprising that the two of you would connect. I mean, it's two beautiful humans here. I mean, Harvey, it sounds like there's some efficiency to this Brazilian workout, and if I kind of start to tease out some of the details and listen to you, those first few Brazilian workouts maybe aren't as fluid as you sort of describe as they go on. You don't happen to recall, to me, those are tools of resilience getting you through those. Do you remember, like, how did you do it? Like, how did you get to that efficiency with that resilient mind?
I think that there's where your coaches step in. I mean, Paul was so generous there, but I had the privilege of working with, as you have, just some of the great minds and the great coaches who have the experience to help provide you with that resilience when you don't know how to provide it for yourself. And we lean on them, and again, those angels among us, these coaches are people who've gifted us great gifts of their knowledge and experience. And yeah, I would definitely nod to them at those times, Sasha. Yep.
For sure. That's such a great point. And I'll pass it back to the audience for a question in just one sec. Personal training it's ultimately a coach relationship, right? Like you're helping someone to become a better version of themselves. What's, kind of the number one motivation piece of advice that you're offering people these days as a coach?
I think as a personal trainer coach, I really try to help people have a positive feeling about their personal journey, because their personal journey is really all that matters. I have clients where they were as young as 4 or 5 years old and as old as 101. So I had a wide range of age of people. But anytime we embark on a physical journey together, it's trying to help them move their own fulcrum to a place of greater health and wellness. And that's done, I think, through positive reinforcement, solid principles, and a good partnership of trust and knowledge. And I think that that my clients, most of them have been with me for many years, and we stayed a good journey together. And I am like a hairdresser. We do process all of life's issues day to day. So these stories they get shared both ways. So we definitely share each other's lives stories.
Well, and kind of what we went, I don't know if it was towards the beginning, but you're basically helping people write their memoir and their story, right? And if they ever put pen to paper, I'm sure, if they wrote short stories or, a long format memoir, that you would be such a big part of it. And, to me, it's no wonder your stories now are on paper, right? Like you're the storyteller, but you're helping people become their own storytellers, which is just super cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, hearing people's stories is so much fun. It really is. Like
Mhm.
to hear the stories of people's lives. I key into them all the time. They're so fun to hear, and they tell us so much about. Like reveal these stories as little portions of ourselves as we share our lives together. So I really find them fascinating, and I really enjoy hearing them.
Oh, so amazing. So, audience, does anybody else have a question for Harvey? Harvey, everyone, I can't. Oh, Jen has a question. Go ahead, Jen. Sorry.
Hi, I didn't know how to put my hand up. um, hey, Sasha. It's Half Stack or Bertha B over here. We know each other. Um, so Harvey, you had said that one of the best kind of pieces of advice that you got from your coach was the aspiration versus inspiration and trying to get yourself out of that tunnel vision and be more open to accepting kind of what happens in the moment while you're either training or racing and being kind of okay with that. How much of a struggle was it for you to kind of switch from being more of an aspiration based athlete to more of an inspiration based? I obviously, I know as a marathoner and half marathoner that, you want a bit of a mix of both in there to kind of motivate you. But how much of a struggle was that to kind of get away from more of the aspiration side?
Well, that's a great question. Uh, it was a real, I think, real struggle because uh, sort of the setting of goals and the concept of having a goal and trying to achieve it, which is not a bad concept in and of itself. It's definitely a good and valid concept. But what can happen is and what did happen for me is I would heap on a lot of expectations as to how these things and when these things and when they should happen. And as a result, I went through a year, I think it might have been 1985, where I was dropping out of races. I'd be running, and I wouldn't hear the split that I thought I should hear. And all of a sudden, I would be off the track. I would just stop running. I'd give up, and then I'd go through a whole process of beating the crap out of myself mentally and emotionally, and then but it was happening over and over again. And it was I was running against my dear friend Dave Mills from London, great coach, great athlete. And we were in an 800 meters. I think my training partner Rick Harris was in the race as well. And we were at a small meet, and we were running the 800 meters, and I got to 100 meters to go, and somehow I wasn't feeling good enough or whatever. I think Dave was about to blow my doors off, and I dropped out. I stepped off the track with 100 to go, and it was a turning point for me because I felt so badly that I had insulted Dave. Like what is wrong with Dave blowing my doors off? On that day that I give him what's the shame? There's that word again. What's the shame in giving him my best and getting beat on the day and going home and regrouping and like and I began to really grapple with like something has to change. right? And my coach I was driving the poor guy nuts because, you know, I was so inconsistent and all these things were happening. And with his help, I refocused that my goal for the whole next season was simply not to drop out of a race. That was the goal I set for myself. You're not going to drop out of a race. I ended up running just one race after another, consistently fast and strong and consistent, and everything else fell into place because I let go of so much of this aspiration. And so his advice to me then next in the growing process was inspiration, that concept of being open to the race and being open to responding and engaging and seeing how the process plays out, asserting. You can assert into a race, you know, at any given point, but that's part of the beauty of what happens in a race. So that learning process was long and pretty hard fought, to be honest with you, Jen. Thanks for that question. Great question.
What a beautiful
You're
question.
welcome.
Jen, do you have any follow-up thoughts or questions, Jen?
Well, I was just gonna say, I ran a marathon back in October, which Sasha also ran in, and Toronto, wasn't it Toronto? And I had probably one of the worst races of my life and was on the verge of quitting, running completely. And Sasha kind of jumped in there and gave me the inspiration and talk that I needed to kind of let that aspiration side go and just try to enjoy the moment and forget about kind of, I guess you could say, the aspiration side of it and the goals, and to just enjoy being there and being around the people and supporting each other. And then on top of that, I have a great coach. I'm coached by Leslie Sexton, and she also is really good about that. So, you know, it was a real eye opener. And then with Harvey's kind of advice he got from his coach tonight kind of really was that kind of icing on the cake, where it was like, you know what, these two wonderful runners kind of did what your coach did for you in their own way.
Yeah, great point. And I think, like I say, you're not alone in that struggle. You know, so many athletes are in that struggle. So many people are in that struggle to let go of something that's going to take the joy out of something that otherwise could be joyous. And I'm really happy that you and Sasha could have that talk, because the two things aren't mutually exclusive. Like high performance, on the contrary, high performance and inspiration and being open and not closing yourself in with your own thoughts. They're the opposite of exclusive. They will open doors for you and help you realize not only great joy, but your potential.
Thanks, Harvey. Such a beautiful point. I will just have to give credit where credit is due, because I did pass the advice along to Jen, but for sure it came from previous coaches who informed my thinking. But I'm not that smart. No, just I'm not that smart. So I'm going to give credit to Michael Shearer, who gave me that advice. But it was, you know, and Jen, I hope this happens for you in future races and anybody else who's struggling with this. The doors that it opens for possibility are unbelievable. It's just, we are our own worst enemy, right? Like, we put so much pressure on ourselves. We lose the joy as we chase the things, as opposed to finding the joy in the pursuit of it. And we're all in this pursuit of excellence, in whatever excellence is for us. But, you know, it's this excellence is, we reach excellence when we reach it through a joyful lens. So I think with that, I'm going to say thank you to everyone for tonight. I'm going to stop the recording. So if there's a couple more questions, I don't want to keep Harvey too long. He's probably got another hectic day. But I'm so thankful for your transparency, your vulnerability, and your amazing stories again tonight, Harvey.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been so much fun. It's been so much fun talking with you and your guests.